Hey, Rick McBride here with your Property Masters in 5 minutes of free time. Lately we've been going over the sales contract that came out with a new one in April, and we just wanted to go over it in detail because there is very confusing and there's a lot of information to be learned from it. We're using the As-Is Residential Contract for Sale and Purchase, issued by the Florida Association of Realtors and approved by the Florida Bar. It's the form that you would use most often in the entire state if you use a realtor. Yesterday we did closing costs paid by the seller. Today they identify closing costs paid by the buyer. The closing costs paid by the buyer are taxes and recording fees on notes and mortgages. So the seller pays the recording fees and the taxes on the actual sale of the property, similar to a sales tax. But the buyer, when you record a mortgage and a note on the mortgage, a promissory note, there is a tax on that the county taxes you on. You also pay recording fees for the deed and financing statements. So the buyer gets the deed, they need to record that to let the public know that they own the property now. And so they record that, and also any financing statements. Also the owner's title policy. So the seller provides the owner with a title policy, but the owner's policy protects them. They can pay an additional amount to protect them, and also they have to pay one for the lender if they're getting a loan, because they want to have a policy as well. They have to pay for a survey if they want it or if the lender requires it. And they also have to pay lender's title policy and endorsements. I actually just mentioned that. Any HOA association application and transfer fees. So if there's an application with the HOA, they have to pay that fee, and then if there's a transfer fee, they have to pay that as well. Seems like everybody's getting it going left and right, isn't it? They also need to pay for a municipal lien search, depending on how that is checked. So there's a paragraph in 9C that decides whether what are they called? What are they called, sir? Any of the, basically any fees, any sidewalk fees are there for the neighborhood, for instance. And there's a
At Valerum?
No, there's a check mark there whether the seller will pay it in full right now or whether the buyer will take it over. So there's a municipal lien search to assure that none of those exists on the buyer. That once the sale transfers, that lien or that doesn't exist, or if it does, it's paid off or at least paid in full. They also have to pay any loan expenses that the lender charges them. They have to pay any appraisal fees. They have to pay for their inspections. There can be numerous inspections, but basically you usually do the home and termite and then often septic tank. And then if you're doing an FHA loan and you have a well, you have to do a well inspection. So the buyer's responsible for all those. Any buyer's attorney fees, if they have an attorney. And then all property related insurance. So that means hazard insurance as well as potentially flood insurance if they're in a flood zone. And then the owner's premium policy. So there's also a check for other. Often you'll see a transaction fee in there from the realtor or anything else that goes in there. But it's either blank or the realtor's transaction fee goes in there. At least 15 days, if 8A is checked, or 5 days prior to closing, a title insurance commitment issued by a Florida title company with legible copies of the instruments listed as exceptions should be issued. So basically, the title company issues a title commitment, and they say, "Hey, we will give you a loan. We will close this property and provide clear and free title and provide you with title insurance so long as these conditions are met." They typically include this lien is satisfied, this lien is satisfied, this particular cloud in the title is closed, that type of thing. 9C, the seller will designate the closing agent or the buyer will designate the closing agent. And this is back to the other paragraph 9C, the municipal lien search. So the lien search is paid for by either the seller or the buyer depending on which box is checked here in the owner's policy and charges. The buyer typically, I mean there's no typical here, but usually when we write a contract we have the seller designate and pay for the closing agent because they are also paying all of the title insurance and all that stuff. There's a special exception here for Miami-Dade. We're not doing Miami-Dade, but it says the seller shall furnish the prior title insurance. Also, there's a survey on or before the title evidence deadline. Buyer may, at the buyer's expense, have the real property surveyed. So it's optional whether the buyer has it surveyed, and then often the bank will require it. Section E is a home warranty. At closing, the buyer or the seller or nobody can pay for a home warranty. It's issued by whatever the company is at a cost of whatever it costs. The home warranty basically provides for protection for things that break. It's a comprehensive coverage, and we highly recommend that you get that. Offer it as a seller and ask for it as the buyer. Any special assessments, which is what I was talking about earlier, on a property, there's a box to check whether the seller will pay the special assessments or in full, or whether they'll pay them up to the point. So a special assessment is, there's a neighborhood here, for instance, where they went in and paved the roads, the city paid for it, and with the special assessment tax, all of the owners are paying that money back to the city. So you're paying it in increments. This box basically says either the seller is going to pay that amount in full at closing, or you're going to take over the payments as the buyer, which is more traditionally the way it's done. And then if neither box is checked, then box A shall be deemed due, which box A is where you pay in increments. So it's assumed that you're just going to take over their payments unless it's negotiated otherwise. That's it for that section. The next section we're going to start working on is disclosures. You guys have a great weekend. Every property we list seems to sell for top dollar overnight. If you're interested in getting top dollar for your property, let us put our Master's Marketing program to work for you. 386-866-10